At the end of the day, every parent wants to do what's best for their baby. So when someone says European formulas are cleaner, safer, and better, it's easy to feel uncertain. I'm Dr. Cameo Carter. I'm a board certified pediatrician and mom of three. And today I want to talk about European versus US formulas because it's something that I get asked about a lot from my patient parents. I recently had a conversation with a parent who had done a lot of her own research, she said, during her pregnancy, and really believed that based on that, the European formulas were superior. It's a common topic, and I want to talk about why people believe this, what the science actually says, and what really matters to your baby's nutrition. I think there's several reasons why European formulas are more appealing to parents. I think number one, their marketing and presentation is generally better. They have different things on their labels that say organic, grass-fed, non-GMO. Those are very appealing words to parents right now, and it sounds more natural, more premium. I think the packaging often looks better. It is cleaner. It is more minimalistic. It looks a little bit more modern. And there's a lot of influencer testimonials that create this sense of trust and exclusivity. And those are things which a lot of parents are looking for or appeal to them. They've done a really good job with social media messaging. Many influencers compare labels ingredient by ingredient without really understanding the scientific names and any of the regulatory context. For instance, they might say, oh, there's no corn syrup, or it's low in sugar, and say that that's a selling point without explaining that formulas use carbohydrates as energy. It's for the same purpose. And I think that ultimately, parents want to have the best for their baby. They want to have good control. In the last number of years, there have been different formula recalls. There's different supply issues. And so then that can cast some doubt on whether that is the best for their baby. And so the European can sound like they have a little bit better control and access, and they can order it from there and not have to deal with our supply chain issues. I think it's important to look at the different regulations and science behind formulas. So there's both the US and European regulatory systems. The US has the FDA, and Europe has the European Commission. And they're the ones responsible for evaluating the quality and whether the ingredients are providing what they're supposed to be. And they both are making sure that they're meeting really strict nutrition and safety standards. The systems vary a little bit differently, but neither one is more superior in terms of baby outcomes. Some key differences are that the European Commission requires DHA, and DHA is really important omega-3 fatty acid, important for brain development and eye development in babies. And the US doesn't require it, but we do use it. So often the baby formulas do have that in there because research has shown that it is beneficial, but it isn't a requirement via the FDA. The US, however, has higher or stricter standards for the amount of iron that is in baby formulas, and that's really important to safeguard against anemia. If you look at kind of the wellness outcomes between the European formulas and the US formulas, there is no difference. Babies grow and they thrive at the same rates. So when we look at like cognitive development, like fewer allergies, improved health. It's the same whether you are using a European formula or a US formula. One thing I hear about a lot is just like the corn syrup and the sugars that are used in formulas. And when they see corn syrup solids or sucrose on US formula labels, parents will assume that it's unhealthy. In reality, these ingredients are safe, they're necessary. They're a carbohydrate source, and that's a baby's main source of energy. The body really sees sugar as sugar, whether it's lactose, corn syrup solids, sucrose, it all breaks down into glucose, which fuels a baby's growth. European formulas tend to use lactose as their primary carbohydrate. Sometimes lactose intolerant babies or those with sensitivity may need alternatives like the corn syrup solids or maltodextrin. So when you see corn syrup on a label, it's not the same thing as pouring your baby a soda. It's carefully measured, safe carbohydrate designed for infant digestion. The ingredient differences reflect formula design choices, not differences in health or in quality. I think when you're considering whether you're going to get a formula from Europe or you're going to get one in the US, it's important to think about the different safety considerations. Labeling and mixing is important. So being sure that you can follow the instructions and read the labels is important because some of those labels may be in a different language. They might use units of measurement that you're not accustomed to. And small dilution errors can affect baby's hydration and can affect their growth. So it's really important that you're understanding that. The concern of recalls and traceability, I think, is important. So if Europe has a recall, that doesn't always reach US consumers. There isn't any FDA oversight or recourse for imported products if there is a problem with it. Also, we don't know necessarily the shipping conditions. So what's happening during transit, what's happening with the temperature, what's happening with the humidity, is there a potential for any contamination, how long is it taking, or something sitting in storage for a while. So those considerations are important, and the supply consistency is important too. I mean, we have that issue in the US, but it is important to understand that if there are difficulties in shipping, we might have to all of a sudden switch to a different formula. It might force unplanned brand switches, which sometimes can affect a kid's tolerance and whether they're going to have some tummy upset, constipation, or diarrhea. I think emphasizing that U.S. formulas are safe. They're trustworthy sources. Big brands like Similac and Enfamil have been around for a long time, and they have been responsible for really good research. And I think that it's important to ask questions and have good transparency about when people are doing research, what are the motivations for that research. And so we should ask about research that pharmaceuticals and includes formula companies are doing. At the same time, if we're defunding research, if we're not supplying funds for it to be done not in a private business situation, who's going to do the research? And I think that's a difficulty that our country has had for a long time, in that healthcare is not something, and research is not something that a lot of funds traditionally have been given to. So in order for us to progress, there has been a motivation for pharmaceuticals to do that research. And it isn't all nefarious. In fact, it's not usually nefarious. These corporations are going to be held liable for problems like recalls and things like that if if there's contaminants, if there's problems with them, they have a motivation to produce a superior product, a healthy, good product. And so they do put a lot of their dollars into research. And so I think it's important that we don't entirely villainize them. There are lots of different options for formula, and your pediatrician can work with you in talking about what those options are, whether they need more of a gentle or a hypoallergenic formula, when you're looking for plant-based, all these different things. There's a lot of options out there, and it can be overwhelming. So talking to your pediatrician about that can help give you more insight. Really, the best formula is the one your baby thrives on. And that can be all different ones. And I think that it's important to be able to understand that both European and US formulas are healthy. Access to healthy foods, that is a problem, more so in the US, that whole healthy foods are more expensive and harder to come by for families. But in terms of formula, it's pretty equivalent.